everyone. Welcome. My name is Steve Eberle, and I'm IBC's Vice President for Advancement Marketing and Communications. I'm so glad that you could join us here this evening. We've got a really special event planned for you. I want to take you back to the years 2019, about 43 years ago, or so it feels like it, when IBC President and CEO Mary McGinnity had a vision. Her idea was to mark IBC's 25th anniversary by missioning IBC core members and benefactors on a pilgrimage, walking in St. Ignatius's footsteps along the 300-mile Camino Ignatiano. IBC had never done anything like this before, and a pilgrimage of this scale was going to require extensive planning and logistics. We would need to be coordinating with Father Iriberri, the Jesuit who organizes these pilgrimages in Spain. We needed to advertise and recruit to invite IBC core members and benefactors to join us. That didn't even get to managing applications, travel logistics, and communications. And with IBC's small staff, we knew we needed help. And here's where Christine Eberle, my sister, and the woman who wrote the book that we're all here for, came in. Christine is a longtime benefactor to IBC. She's an experienced retreat facilitator. And in 2019, she was a brand new member of the IBC Philadelphia and South Jersey Regional Advisory Council. She'd recently stepped away from working full-time in campus ministry, which gave her time to dedicate to IBC's mission and this project. It's also where she found time to write and publish her two books, Finding God in Ordinary Time, 2018, just before that, and Finding God Abiding in 2022. So after a couple of false starts, thanks to COVID-19, a group of 25 pilgrims, all connected to IBC, finally set out on the Camino Ignaciano to celebrate IBC's 25th anniversary during IBC's 27th anniversary. And one of the outcomes of this was Christine's third book, Finding God Along the Way. So here's what tonight is all about. We have two special treats for you. We are here tonight. We're going to be able to celebrate the launch of Christine's new book about the Camino experience. And you're going to have an opportunity to hear directly from some of our IBC pilgrims about the life lessons that they brought home from the Camino. Because at the end of the day, this book isn't meant to be a travel guide for those planning the 300-mile trek. It's for all of us who want to experience the power of pilgrimage in everyday life. So please sit back, relax as we enjoy this journey together over the next hour. Just a couple housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded, so if you experience a technical glitch, don't worry. We'll have the recording available by the end of the week, and we'll send it out to everyone. Also, we have the Q&A feature down here. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A section or the chat. I'll be monitoring them. And that's about it. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our President and CEO, Mary McGinnity, and our resident author, Christine Eberle. Mary and Christine, turn your cameras on. There you are. Hi.
Hi. Hey, Steve.
Well, thanks to both of you for getting this ball rolling way back in 2019 or maybe even earlier. Mary, I wanted to start with you. Why was this how you wanted to celebrate IBC's 25th anniversary?
Why this? Why this? Well, first of all, Steve, thank you. Thank you for coordinating this evening that we have together to talk and to celebrate Christine's book, which I have to say, now that I had my copy a few weeks ago, I couldn't wait to read it. And Christine, it is so, so beautiful. So thank you for just bringing your beautiful talents for weaving story, reflection, quotes together in such a powerful way. Thank you so much for this. And Steve, I have to say thank you for all you do for IBC. Actually, what both of you do for IBC. It's really great. And thank you for pitching in and helping Christine, because if it weren't for the two of you, this would not have happened. So let me give an answer to that question by going back a little bit more in the context of the history that you gave a little bit. IVC has a good friend and an author and entrepreneur, Chris Lowney, who called me up several years ago and said, I'm trying to work with this wonderful Jesuit priest in Spain, Father Jose Araberi, and he's got this project that he's starting to coordinate, and he's going to be in the United States, and I'd love if you could get together with him and just see if there's some connections or some way you could help him in this project. And I said, sure. So I got together with Father Araberi, came into DC. We had lunch and a whole afternoon talking, and I was learning about this thing that he was trying to develop, this Camino thing. And as I heard more and more about this project, I got to thinking about, well, what about something like this for IBC? We're approaching the 25th anniversary. And then as I got talking with him about it, he said, hey, you know what? This would be great for your people, all your people. This would be really great. It's not that hard to do. It's get this, Christine, mostly flat. Mostly flat. So your people could do this. I went, oh, this sounds great. This sounds really wonderful. But then I started thinking and reflecting about the whole Camino experience. And I thought, when you mark a moment in time, like an anniversary, the 25th anniversary, and if we could do something that marks that in connection to this incredible lineage that this human being 500 years ago walked this very walk in response to movements of the Holy Spirit within his own soul. And today, here we are 500 years later in a mission because of that. So if we could connect that at this anniversary time, what a powerful thing for IVC to do, and to link who we are today with what happened so long ago and all the years in between. It seemed to me to be relevant, but I wasn't sure we could pull it off. And so I came back and discussed it with staff. Steve, you were part of those conversations. And then we decided, hey, let's give it a try. And then I thought, well, it's not unlike the Holy Spirit. Let's just extend an invitation. See if anybody's interested in this. Let's just extend invitation. And as we extended invitation and saw more and more yeses, starting with Christine, yes, I'll coordinate it. We don't have a lot of staff to put time into doing something like this. And then as we open it up, where there be people who would actually go with us and hike and walk, and they're yeses and yeses and yeses. And that's very much the history of IVC. A lot of men and women saying yeses to the movements of the Spirit. So it seemed to be a perfect way for us to celebrate this moment in time of this mission by linking it to the past.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and speaking, you kind of took the words out of my mouth, because it was that invitation to come in. And I mean, Christine, you were the first one to accept that invitation. And I mean, I've known you a long time, and I know your parents. We don't come from an outdoorsy bunch.
We sure don't.
No, the longest walk we ever did was a dog walk to the Wawa. So what made you respond so quickly to this invitation? Why did you want to do this?
Sure. So let me back up and say the Camino de Santiago, which is what most people mean when they say the Camino, that had been on my theoretical bucket list for decades, without ever making it to the top. I thought I would like to do it because I speak Spanish, and I thought of myself as a big walker, after, getting out of mom and dad's house. Turns out I'm not a big hiker. I didn't realize there was a difference. More on that later, I'm sure. But like I said, it never really came together. And then as soon as you told me about this Ignatian Camino that I had never heard of before, I knew I wanted to do it. I mean, I had been a theology major at St. Joseph's University, a fine Jesuit institution. I'd had a class when I was 21 years old called Jesuit Spirit in Action, where we read the autobiography of St. Ignatius. I'd been working in Ignatian spirituality my whole professional life. So the opportunity to be in those places that I had only read about and imagined, to literally walk in the footsteps of Ignatius, that didn't feel like a thing I could pass up. And there was also a timing factor. There really was no earlier time in my life that I would have had the freedom to do this. But Porter had just retired. I was getting ready to transition from full-time campus ministry into freelance work. There was a lot of openness and uncertainty on my horizon. It really felt like a good time to have a big project and to do this thing that seems so amazing.
Mm. Yeah, and time the time in your life, I think I mean, I've been on a lot of retreats. I love a good retreat center with a labyrinth, because of that sense of journey, and that sense of change that you can do the labyrinth dozens of times, but the way the sun is positioned changes everything. And so that, Mary, we talk a lot about in IVC journey, and that journey of life and being in that time. What parallels do you see in that, that connection of pilgrimage and of the IVC experience?
Going back in my mind too, thinking about having the opportunity, the other reason that I really wanted to go on this journey and to hike, I wasn't able to do the whole month, but to do half of it, I really wanted to immerse myself into that similar kind of experience, the way that Christine talked about it. But I also was wanting to look at where in the Ignatian story, in the story of St. Ignatius, did IVC resonate? I knew and heard and read all about Ignatius from his own story, his conversion, starting the Society of Jesus. And it was about education. It was about forming people's minds, hearts. Education was a big, huge, that's how we know the Jesuits, education. But where did Ignatius connect with people in need, people who were poor? I had never really gotten a good story around that. So my whole time on the Camino, I kept trying to listen for the stories. Where would Ignatius have ever joined IVC? Was kind of the question in my head. Like, if he were living today, would he have joined IVC? So I'm walking and walking, and we finally got to this one church in Barcelona, a chapel, Santa Maria del Mar. And we went back into this little chapel that was being actually under construction, was being renovated. And we weren't supposed to go back there, but Father Eberle had wonderful ways to sneak us into places. So we got back in there. And he told the story about in this chapel in Barcelona, in this church in Barcelona, Ignatius every day would sit there and beg alms for the poor. And then at night, he would go down and out into the town and give and be with the poor and the marginalized in the city. And I actually pointed down to a stone where he sat, supposedly sat, and did his begging. There's a beautiful statue of him with his hands out, asking and inviting. And in fact, we have a cute little picture with a couple of our hikers. They're sitting in there, and I saw that was IVC, that, God is bringing their gifts, their talents, and putting them out and bringing them out into the world. And so that was the IVC moment for me on a practical level in terms of Ignatius's life. But then I also think a lot about, now our IVC Service Corps members are men and women who are at a new point in their life, a new adventure in their life, much like Christine's new adventure in her own life, and openness and uncertainty. And when we're in those spaces, we can get callings, we can get invitations, and they will hear a calling to do service, to walk with God, perhaps, to discover their spirituality more deeply. And this is an adventure, much like a Camino of life that we do each and every day. So they take this leap, this adventure, much like those of us who are pilgrims. When I went on it, I didn't know where I was going to go, how I was going to manage things pretty much. I had to let go of a lot of my own personal agendas of what I'm going to do and be led by others, which as a person who's in charge of something, being led by others, I had to let go. And this is very much a life experience that IVC Service Corps members have when they let go and they go into a new situation. Many of them are working in situations they've never encountered before. And there's an opening of the soul and the spirit and the mind and the heart in a new way. So that seemed to blend so beautifully with what the Ignatius Camino journey was about, and IVC.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that. You were talking about kind of what IVC core members do, and they're kind of in that stage of life. Christine, I remember when you were transitioning out of campus ministry, and you were insisting, you're very clear, you were not retiring, you were becoming a freelance you. And I think of that ever since you said that, I think of that for IVC core members, that they, in many ways, they are kind of transitioning into just being able to be freelance versions of themselves and bring whatever part of them that they want to bring into that. But speaking of bringing things in, I mean, your book, I recently saw, I think you are now number 5 on Amazon in European travel guides, Spain. Surely that was not your goal in writing that book, although that's kind of fun. But how did this book come about? Why did you want to do this in your freelance view era?
Yeah. So, okay. So good question. So, before my early readers got their hands on the book, the original unedited preface contained the following line. So I did this big thing. So what? Why should you care? Someone convinced me that that was perhaps a little too not quite polished enough, for the preface
Young
to the
adult
book.
novel.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You don't work with young adults anymore. But really, I was very conscious of what a privilege it was to get to do this, to have simultaneously the health and the strength and the time and the resources and the desire to make this pilgrimage. That was a real perfect storm of goodness. Most people don't have all those things line up, either they might never have the ability or the desire or the freedom to walk away from their life for a month, literally. And so I knew that the world did not need another guide to the Ignatian Camino. There are many out there, and Father Eberle has himself written 2 of them. I really wanted this book to be for people who perhaps most probably were not going to walk across Spain, but who very much wanted to understand more how to live in this world with the heart of a pilgrim. People for whom that metaphor, especially slightly later in life, would be like a guiding star and could be a helpful metaphor, which is why the subtitle of my book is so important to me: Wisdom from the Ignatian Camino for Life at Home. Because we can't all walk across Spain, but we have probably all had the experience of having to do something hard, one step at a time, of having to learn from failure and pain and distress, of having to develop the humility to ask for help, something many of us not terribly good at, of needing to sort of travel with our eyes on the prize and yet be very present to the path right in front of us. The metaphors to be unpacked from pilgrimage are endless. And so that's why each chapter ends with some questions for personal reflection to really connect people's own experience in their regular lives to the concept of our being pilgrims on the way, all of us together.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, when we were doing this, I used to joke, people would say, and are you going to go on the Camino? And I would say, if I'm going to spend 30 days in Europe, I'm going to be going in and out of restaurants, not churches. But having read your book, as a person who didn't do it and and didn't have much interest in doing it, I mean, that taking away that heart of a pilgrim really resonates. And also that sense of I feel like sometimes our lives just have too much clutter in them, and pilgrims can't take all the clutter with them.
No, we
Uh,
cannot.
Well, Christine, since this is a book launch event, we can't have a book launch event without a reading. So, could I invite you to? I think you have a chapter queued up that's pretty well connected. Well, I guess they're all connected to IBC since the whole book couldn't happen without us. But I'm gonna let you take it away.
Sure. So I would like to read you all a piece from the chapter called In the Autumn of Life, which starts out with in the very early days, our trying to figure out when we should do this. What time of year should we even go? Um, so I say, in the end, the pandemic chose for us, but fall turned out to be the perfect season for an Ignatian Volunteer Corps Camino. IVC members are age 50 and better, some much better. We are a community in the autumn of life. The metaphor alone made October an ideal month for our journey. Through the Camino, we embodied an essential quest of the core to grow closer to God in our encore years, always listening, as St. Ignatius did, for divine invitations. An essential part of our pilgrimage was the 2 hours we would spend in silence each day, praying with material from the spiritual exercises. Organized into 4 thematic weeks, which unfold over varied amounts of time, depending on the individual, this retreat is the cornerstone of Ignatian spirituality. The saint envisioned the exercises as an aid to discernment, designed to liberate the retreatants from the influence of any inordinate attachment. Often people make this retreat on the brink of a major decision. Jesuits approaching vows, for example, or someone contemplating a significant life change. Turning points, however, are not reserved for the young. In the autumn of life, what decisions did we face? What inordinate attachments threatened our freedom to make them? The particulars varied, but we were all of an age when time, never infinite, was clearly finite. We had to ask ourselves, how was God calling us to serve the world in our remaining years? How would we spend our limited health, strength, and resources? These are relevant questions at any age, but they are particularly potent in autumn. To paraphrase Mary Oliver, we had to ask ourselves, what were we going to have done with our one wild and precious life? The metaphor did not disappoint. Together, we pondered the urgencies of the season. We opened ourselves to a fresh adventure at an age when we could easily grow set in our ways. We savored broad vistas at a time when the horizon could be narrowing. Like trees shedding their leaves, we let go of what was not essential in order to travel unencumbered. In the spirit of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, we set out in the autumn of the year and the autumn of our lives to discover what could come next.
Love that. Thank you.
Hmm.
I had also noticed at the beginning, you talked about in that chapter, you talked about inviting and people being invited into that. And I'm just clocking that we're at the half-hour mark now, and the concept of invitation just keeps coming up. So I'd just like to say to the audience members, just to maybe take some time this week and think about where you're being invited, and just clock that in your own life. But now I would like to invite our panelists to join us, because it's not just the 3 of us here. We have 5 really wonderful people that I'm excited to introduce you to, and you get to join in a little bit of their experience. So panelists, you can turn your cameras and microphones on. We have with us today Ann Cohen, a core member and a founding regional advisory council member in IVC Denver. Charlie Eisenman, a core member serving in New England. Dave Hinchin, an IVC staff member, our director at IVC New England. Jane Lefebvre, core member and regional advisory council member in Denver, and Pat Payne, core member serving with IVC Baltimore. So welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for being here. It's always fun to get back together with you. I didn't actually get to meet many of the pilgrims in person. I was just the guy controlling the Zooms when we were panically meeting as the pandemic descended on us. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to go around as the facilitator so that you guys don't have to figure out how to toss the ball from one person to the next on Zoom. So Anne, I would love to hear Christine's book is wisdom, life lessons from the Camino. What did you bring home from the Camino?
I was so confident and certain about the Camino for 2 years as we waited for our opportunity to go. Each time when the question was asked, who's still in? Oh, I'm in. I was ready, always set. I had completed the first year of a 3-year program for spiritual direction formation, feeling very confident about that. But before the second year of formation, I had a canine collision that broke the side of my knee, kind of a cannonball moment pause for me. And I really prayed for this healing and strength because my orthopedist said, you aren't going to do it. And I was so certain. In fact, some said, Anne's not going. She has this broken body. And I went because I felt like this was my time. I really wanted to go. But what I prayed for is the last lines, I think, of the Pilgrim's Blessing says, and may he accept you to his loving service. In the middle of my formation as a spiritual director, was this what I was being called to do? Would he accept me to his loving service? So all along my time on the walking in the Camino, that's what I prayed for, to be able to be accepted into that service.
I remember when you broke your leg, and I was one of those people that said, I don't think Anne's doing this. And
Oh, I took you off the list.
Oh, I'm so grateful that I was able to go. There's so much that I brought from it. I feel like I paid attention. What I received was this simple faith, came with an open heart. What can I do to ease other people's pain, having mine myself, sharing walking sticks with Christine, or snacks with others, or sharing prayer time with Pat at the top of the mountain there in Montserrat, carrying the prayers. I knew that I needed to be there for this pilgrimage, and felt like at the end I was accepted into his loving service, and now finished my formation and serve as a spiritual director, leading people through the exercises.
Fantastic. How about you, Charlie? What did you bring home from the Camino?
Steve, and it's great to see all my Camino friends. When it came time to for me to embark on the Camino with my wife Betsy, I was in I'd call it a me-centric place. I was just kind of winding down from a career that was very sales and production driven and egocentric. What have you done for me lately? Kind of environment, and I was trying to figure out retirement. What am I going to do in retirement? What's the new me going to be? And had just bought a new house in Boston, and so that was a big transition for both Betsy and I. So it was a lot of thinking about me and my life and what am I going to do. And as we walked the Camino, as each day went by, I would just kind of unwind a little bit, and I'd observe people going to work, and the birds chirping, and the clouds moving by, and people in cafes, and people working in the vineyards, and it came to life for me that it's a big world out there, and my little issues back at home are just that, just my very little issues, and that everybody is a child of God and out there in the world doing their own thing with their joys and their problems. it put things in perspective. I'd call it, it gave me a degree of humility. It made me feel like, you know, my problems are not, or even my joy is not, is just a little speck. And we're all one. The other thing I brought back, and I still think about, is a bunch of quips that Father Eberle would say, and some of them were kind of funny. I remember one day, I think we were in Navarrete, and we had a blessing, and we were in the square, and it was very kind of thoughtful uh, blessing that he had given, as most of his are. And then so we start walking, and I'm thinking about what he said, and 30 seconds later he says, "Look out for the dog shit on the left." Or when we were about to, I think we were about to climb up at Montserrat, and we're all gathered around next to the highway, and we're looking up at the mountain, and that's where we're headed. And it's beautiful, and he's telling us how God absolutely loves each and every one of us unconditionally. And as he was saying this, these motorcycles were roaring by, disrupting the peace. And Father Barry says, "Except them. He doesn't love them." um, and then at the very end, when we got to Manresa, where the Ignatius Spirituality House is, and we came over this hill and we saw it, and it's this grand, huge structure. And, this is where it was home for Father Eberle. This is where he lives. And he showed us those third floor, two windows to the left. That's where I live. And you will not be invited there. He would say something. So I think of that and kind of the humor that he had. It kind of makes me chuckle. But one quip that he would say, not a lot, but from time to time, that resonates the most is he would have the habit of when we were gathered together in the morning and kind of setting the pace for us for the day, and what maybe what we should be thinking about, and he would point things out to us sometimes. He would say things like, the rain, or the water, or the sky, or the green, or the mountains, or the vineyards. And then occasionally he would pause, and then he would just say, "Life." And he would start walking. And it's just that little thing. But I really took that home, and him just looking and up at all around and just saying "life," and then starting to walk. And I don't know, whenever something is going on in my life, or it's stressful, or it's joyful, or it's not so joyful, or it's a problem, I think of him just saying "life," and that we're not really in control. We're just on this journey, and it's just life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. What about you, Dave? What'd you bring home from the Camino?
Yeah, Steve, thank you for asking. Uh, I was trying to sort this all out and trying to put myself back in time and where I am now. A number of things that surfaced. One is just gratitude, gratitude for the whole thing, to be able to have done this wonderful journey with wonderful people. Something that I've not had a chance to do in quite the same way. When the invitation first came out, Mary let us know that we regional directors, if we wanted to do it, could do it. It's okay. You can go and enjoy this time, and it's part of your IBC commitment. I said, "I'm in. This is great." And Karen was just about to have a sabbatical for 3 months, and Karen loves the outdoors. And she was attracted to this too, and hiking. We've done some hiking over the years. And so it was all fitting together beautifully in 2020. Uh, and then it stopped and it paused. And like Ann, there was no way we're getting off this list. We stayed on that list right through. We kept having these meetings, we meet these other people, and then I'd write all their names down, and we'd have another meeting, and a lot of the names weren't there anymore, and other names were there. And poor Christine must be going crazy. But then we got to go. We worked our schedules in a way that we could go, and fall was the perfect time to go. I didn't have strong expectations. I just knew that walking through Spain with wonderful people and following Ignatius, who I was in the Jesuits for years, and I'm so old that when I heard about Ignatius, it was very boring stuff out of old books that the master of novices fished out of a bin in Woodstock that he found that they were throwing out. And I really didn't connect much to Ignatius, but now Ignatius became a real human being with real and following him on every step of the way and seeing these places and hearing his struggles. That was something else I brought home. I think one of the most beautiful things that I brought home, this is one I always come back to, is the community of people that did this together. I was able, Karen and I were able to do this with some lifelong friends. We were able to do it with each other to deepen our relationships with these friends. But then to meet these new people that became friends and still remain friends. And we come together, some of us that are able to do it geographically. We find ways to get Christine to come to Boston. We just keep building on it. And now we have a book that we share with everybody, and we make them read it, and it just keeps building on the experience. So that group of people, the companions, I think was one of my big take homes. There are other little things like life as a Camino, the pilgrimage, that the theme of Christine's book, really, that it's just one step at a time, one day at a time. Angels. I got to appreciate angels. Charlie was an angel. He probably won't admit it, but the self-centeredness you talked about, Charlie, that's something that I struggle with. I was going to do that hike no matter what, with those people that were struggling. Well, good luck to them. I'm going to do this thing. And now I'm beginning to realize that, people were hurting. It would have been nice to be an angel, like Charlie was an angel, going to the back of the pack and seeing how people were. So little life lessons, lots of other ones too, but that's probably enough for now.
That's beautiful. Yeah, you all really have become an international community, which is pretty neat. Jane, let's turn it to you. What did you bring home from the Camino?
Well, gosh, I think, first of all, thank you, Christine, for encapsulating our experience. It is wonderful to have that, wonderful to relive the experience. I came into the Camino having done other segments of the Camino de Santiago, some other pilgrimages, as part of a journey of grief. So when the first ideas were floated out, I was probably one of the first, I may have been the first one to sign up, I think, and stayed on the program the whole time as well. I love hiking. I had just done the exercises. I had never walked with a priest along with us the way we did. I mean, doing the Camino de Santiago, you're kind of on your own, and it's still a Camino, a metaphor for life. You figure out where you're going and so on. And there is a spiritual component to it. But having something structured with Father Iriberri was just a whole different dimension. And it was just the most wonderful experience. And I have to say, my thing I took away the most was about attachments and freedom. And anybody, I think this came up early on in the Camino. I like walking fast. And so I'm like Dave, I'm at the front of the pack. And I also like having a lot of irrelevant data that I never look at again, but I always want to know, how far are we walking? How much is the elevation? Where are we now? How much longer will it take? When is there food? When is there a bathroom? Newsflash, there weren't any. And you know, so one day we were talking after our morning meditation, and Father Iriberri is asking us, well, what's God saying to you when you walk? And I said, not hearing too much. And he said, I think you need to put your watch away. So I have a smartwatch and I was always keeping everybody updated. Okay, we've done 300 feet of elevation. I think we've got this much more. And clearly I was missing out on the whole gist of the experience, to be aware and to be open to God's voice as we take this path. And so that is probably the greatest gift I got and the thing I bring home, but continue to struggle with, because you'll see it's still on my arm. And, but you know, the freedom that you get when you aren't stuck on these other extraneous things allows you to be open to what there is all around you and all the gifts that we're given. So I think that's probably my biggest thing that I brought home.
Really great. Thank you. I'm realizing that I feel like, Christine, maybe your next book should be the Enneagram numbers go on a Camino, and you can kind of figure out everyone's what the best combination is.
There you go. That would be a humorous book.
Yeah. And how about you, Pat?
Well, I'm just thinking about the experience of the bathrooms, boys on the left, girls on the right, in the grassy fields. So I can relate to having the experience of a Camino because I had done some of the walking before, and I had just joined the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, and I was talking to a guy by the name of Jim Davis, and he said there is a walk that's taking place in a month, and it's going to be taking place in Spain and following in the footsteps of Ignatius. I said, I want to go. And so instead of 3 years, I dialed up, I guess it was you, Christine. How do I get into this? So amazing. I was able to make the arrangements on very short notice. So I was determined to go because I'd had such a great experience when I was walking in the ancient pilgrimage trails in France and Spain. Why? Because I found walking on those ancient paths and seeing the beauty of those ancient landscapes was the one place I could be completely in the now. Nowhere else but in that space at that time. But the Ignatian Camino added a whole new dimension for me because this was the walk where we followed in the footsteps of an earlier pilgrim who was on a transformative journey that would change his life, Ignatius of Loyola. So we walked the very path that he walked, and we journeyed through the towns that he visited. We stayed in places, and I like to imagine that maybe even he stayed at that home of St. Peter Claver, whose family estate was there and is now a hostel for pilgrims. And we prayed where he prayed in Montserrat with that little chapel, which is surrounded by this huge, the little chapel where he put his sword and his cape as he decided to change his life, and in Manresa, where he spent a year searching what would he do next. It changed his life and it changed mine in the self. It helped me to understand, not in an intellectual way, but what it really takes to change, to renew oneself, and to find a new path. For him, it took a year. I think that he was in Manresa for a year and he walked out. It's not an easy process. And the walk really demonstrates that. Some days are harder than others. The hills get higher. I remember barely making it up one hill on the last day when Christine said, come on. Sometimes you want to turn back or quit. But finally, when you arrive at the end of the journey, you are changed and renewed. And it's that experience of transformation that was encapsulated in the life of St. Ignatius that I found as the truly most valuable part of the walk.
Thank you. That's powerful. And Pat, you talking about, walking in those footsteps, being in the same buildings and the same towns. I mean, it makes me think of how powerful land is to humans and how powerful it is to be in a place and to touch it. And when we think about so many of the challenges in the world today are around land and where people are, but it is really a very powerful experience to be on land that means something.
Right.
I'm also conscious that for anyone who read the book, this is a little bit like getting to meet celebrities because y'all get name checked or name dropped at some point or another. And so I wonder who's gonna in the audience is gonna go back and reread the book now and try and connect the dots. But you all did this together. I'd love to hear from you, like thoughts or reactions to what people shared.
Hmm. I'm very touched by the stories that I had forgotten as much as I captured and wrote down. Like, Anne, I forgot that I dropped you from the list and then like just reached out to see how you were doing. And it sort of came up in an email conversation that apparently you were intending to come. And I had to like fish your info out of the deleted tab, Pat, I totally forgot how last minute you were. And I think Steve and I had like a little back and forth over like, which of us is going to vet her and make sure she's not a crazy lady joining us at the last minute. But I was like, actually, she's pretty
That was a
cool.
high risk.
She's going to be okay. Charlie, I'm remembering, I mean, I didn't forget this because I made it into the book, but like you carried my backpack, you talked about being self-centered or me-centric, but on that terrible climb to Aranzazu on day 2, at one point I looked around, I was like, where is my backpack? Oh, Charlie has it. That's nice. I didn't give it to you. Like you took it from somebody else who was carrying it. So just so much goodness. Dave, you were the oldest person to walk the full Camino, and you walked every single step. So yeah, Canada Jane.
Get a
You
badge.
hot picks and floods. And somebody loaned you hiking poles that you weren't enjoying, and I had lost one and broken the other, and you gave yours to me. Just so much goodness all around the circle.
I misunderstood that part about the age, Christine. I saw in your list, because you broke us down by age groups, that there were people in their 80s that were going on this trip. And I was 79, I think, at the time.
You were.
And I kept going up and asking people as we started off, how old are you? Are you 80? And Aussie Jane and Tony like got really angry at me. It's like, we're not. I didn't realize that the 80-year-olds were going to come in the midway mark. You're right. I guess I was the oldest on the whole thing. I also wonder, Canada Jane had a different experience than I did because I liked hanging out in the back. So I never really got to see the first things that came along, except for the one day that Karen and I decided to walk right next to Veronica for most of the time. Veronica, for those who don't know, was always way out in front of everybody. And so one day Karen and I decided, well, let's see if we can keep with her. And we did until so for some reason we all had to stop. But I liked being in the back. There was a lot of interesting things. I saw storks that almost nobody saw because I was way in the back, and so was Padre Jose. And he said, come over here. And we went in the brush and down to the river, and there were all these storks that we I never would have seen otherwise. So there's virtues to being in the end and in the back too, although I was not like Charlie carrying backpacks for anybody.
Well, the whole experience was spiritually enriching, but equally enriching was just being community and just setting out with 25 people who maybe you knew one or two or three of them. In a lot of cases, I think nobody, And every time I've done that in my life, I've never done something of this magnitude, but maybe a weekend retreat, or if you've gone on a group trip somewhere to Europe or something, the community and getting to know people is just very enriching, and that's something that I'll always kind of take away from this trip. So, some folks I feel like I spent a lot of time with, and we kind of yuck it up or to kind of gravitate towards each other. And other folks, maybe not so much, but somewhere during the trip, I at least had one serious conversation with everybody, with each person individually, just about their life or where they were. And when you roll all that up, it's just a really just enriching, unforgettable experience, the sense of community.
We got a couple questions from the audience that I want to turn to. One question, which I think I can answer, although people could jump in if you want. Somebody asked, were there any friendships that came out of this beyond just in the IBC world? And we talked about at the beginning that the start and stop of all of this, that we were going to have 2 Caminos, and then we had one, and the pandemic got. Because of that, we ended up not being able to fill up all of the slots with IVC people that we had hoped to. And so, Father, you're very opened it up to others. So we had some people come in from other countries, and we asked that they would fill out the same application that all the IVC people did. And they happily did it, and they joined us for our pre-meeting reflections. And I think 2 countries, 3 countries represented from other pilgrims.
Yeah, well, Tony and Jane are from South Africa but live in Australia, so they count for 2 countries and 2 continents. And Veronica is from Malaysia but lived at the time in Australia, so we had a lot of the globe represented.
Yeah.
And I am still in very lovely regular contact with Aussie Jane.
Nice.
Yeah.
We have a question from Jerome that I think is a kind of neat one. Did any of the pilgrims feel that God was speaking to them on the Camino, and why was it important to do the Camino there? Could you have accomplished the same thing without walking or without traveling to Spain?
Am I allowed to just say, oh, you should read my book?
You can read it.
I mean, I would say to the second half of the question, it would be different elsewhere. Did we have to do this? No, we did not. But this is the way that we chose to do it. And any place that you take yourself intentionally, prayerfully, striving to be present and to listen, can be its own form of Camino. And I think God was pretty chatty.
Can I just add one thing too? I think the fact that we followed in the footsteps of Ignatius added gravitas to we were undertaking, that you're doing exactly what he did 500 years ago.
Yeah. Though, as I did point out at one very blistery, exhausted moment, Ignatius had a mule for most of the journey. So we were really following in the footsteps of Ignatius's mule.
Well, and that does make me, one of the things is, I think, is Jane, while you were sharing, I was thinking about, it seems like all of you had a breaking point on this, that here we are, 1-2 years later, and it's a wonderful memory, and there's a lot of laughs, but something happened to each of you throughout this that was disappointing or breaking, that I don't know what it would have been like to do this on your own, without this community, or without the guidance of Father Eberle and the kind of the modified exercises you were doing.
Of course, my leg was a struggle, a challenge from the start, but I was determined to do it, and I could walk. I didn't have any problem walking. My legs started to swell, and I know Jane, my Canada Jane friend, she said that she spoke to Father Eberle, said, I don't think Anne should keep walking the rest of this day. Somebody else needed a transport to the next location. And it just needed, I needed someone to point that out because I was going to do it. But she was looking out for me, I think, and saw that need to just take a break. And that helped me because then the next day I could walk the whole day. Just needed a little ice and get off the leg for part of the time.
I know I had a similar breaking point, and I think you and I were both in sick bay together, as we put it. But when I arrived in Barcelona just to join up with everything, I was fine. And then I came down with a terrible respiratory virus. And even though the doctor cleared me to go, it was really, really debilitating to me. And it was really hard. And so the first day was really hard, but I had these angels, people like Charlie, people were carrying my backpack, people were walking with me, people were helping me. And it was an incredibly humbling, but beautiful experience to be cared by others. The second day, and so I stayed back in sick bay second day, but by the third day, I was like, that's it. I'm going. I've been working out for this for months. I'm ready. I'm going. I'm starting out. I'm a couple miles out in the morning. Then all of a sudden, my shoulder got pulled. Father Eberle pulls me off the walk. And he said, I'm going to call you a cab. You're going back. I'm like, no, I've been waiting months to do this. No, I'm going to do this. He said, no, you're going back. I was so mad. I was so angry. And it pulled me off the side. Everybody else gone off. Everybody's great. He's sitting there with me. He's calling a little cab. He says, I have to get you in. He's sitting there and he gets very quiet. And I'm just stewing. I'm really angry. And he comes over to me and goes, so how you feeling? I said, like a failure. And he said, oh, then you must be close to Jesus. Because he was a failure too. And then he walked away. All right, that's it. I give up. I'm going back to sick bay for another day. But dang it. But that was a breaking point, Steve. Like you talk about it. I think we all, each of us, have our little moments that we just really crumble down. And then we had somebody who cared for us and stayed with us. And that's when God was talking to me, through Father Eberle. Stop.
And I really want to emphasize that 2 hours of prayerful silence that started each walk, that was one of the most significant things, I think, for most of us. It was a little hard to imagine when it was just a concept, but there was such goodness to just, getting out of wherever we were staying and then having Father Jose like gather us up at the edge of town, give us our prayer marching orders, in those, as Charlie was saying, his ability to like pull everything together in a nice, beautiful, brief reflection, and then like the silence would just settle and we'd walk off. And we weren't, somebody said to me, like, did you talk to each other when you were out of his earshot? But we really didn't. Like, people were very respectful of that time. And I think a lot of really good prayer happened, in that expansiveness, because, if you sit down and try to pray in the morning or whenever you're doing that, there is a to-do list that is like right here. When all you have to do is the one thing, just walking, it is so much easier to really immerse yourself in prayer.
I think of, as I listen to each of you reflect, I think again about the IVC experience and how, for so many people, I was a director of the Baltimore region, and I worked with that community there, and so many people come into IVC excited for this adventure, and then at a certain point in their service, they kind of come face to face with the realities of poverty, the violence and the indignity of poverty, the inefficiency of the system that exists. And I think it's not uncommon for an IVC member to have that experience of just like, oh, like, what have I gotten myself into? But it's that community that helps bring people through it. And it's the prayer, it's the guidance of the spiritual reflectors, and just that community of your peers. And if it's easy, you're probably not doing it right. There's one other question that has been asked many, many times, and we We all talked about this before the audience came in, and the question is can be summarized as, when are you doing it again? And Mary?
We're laughing because we all said, somebody's going to ask that question. And
We should have taken a poll on how many people were going to ask that question.
I know. Well, and where I left it back is, if there's interest, if there's an invitation, if there's a calling, we can make it happen again. I have no doubt, because you heard the story how this all solved. It was because there was a desire and invitation and people wanted. So be in touch with Steve. If there's a calling, we can do this again at some point. We're at the 30th anniversary of IBC. So, hey, what do we do? The 25th anniversary at the 27th year, you said, Steve? Well, hey, maybe we do the 30th at the 32nd, right?
Yeah, we can do this after bird flu. There were 160 people who joined us here tonight, so I think it's safe to say that there's interest, and I want to echo what Mary said. If that this is the kind of thing that if we have people who are interested and we have a little bit of help, you don't have to write a book to help. We could probably make it happen, and it doesn't have to be the Camino Ignaciano. It could be some other form of pilgrimage or service experience. So yeah. Back to the book. Christine, how do we get the book?
Oh, right, yeah. So the name of the book, Finding God Along the Way, Wisdom from the Ignatian Camino for Life at Home. Available wherever books are sold online. The best thing you can do is walk into your local independent bookstore and ask them please to order you a copy. But there's also a wonderful online organization called bookshop.org that will, you can designate a local independent bookstore to benefit from your purchase. So that's a lovely way to do it as well. Google me, Christine Marie Eberle. You can find me, and then you can find the book, but available wherever books are sold online.
Great. And I got to be one of those people who read the advanced copy, so I just read it in 3 nights on my way to bed each night. But I've heard people say that I sat down. Anne, you said I sat down. I read it all in one sitting, and I've heard people say they can't put it down. Is there but I know some of your other books are usually kind of like kind of meant to kind of pace yourself through a season. Is there a right way to read this book, or a recommended way to read this book?
So no right and wrong ways, though. Whenever somebody says to me about any of my books, oh, I read your book yesterday. I'm like, do you know how long it took me to make? So yes, devour it if you like. I'd prefer you sort of nibble at it, but one thing that I'm kind of excited about is that Lent is approaching. Ash Wednesday is March 5th, and I figured out that if one wanted to pray with this book during Lent, you could start on the Monday before Ash Wednesday and finish on Easter Monday. And so I have developed a Lent supplement to go with the book that connects the material from each chapter, often to the scripture reading of the day from the Catholic lectionary, and to sort of the point in Lent where we are. So that is available on my publisher's website. This book was published by Paraclete Press, to whom I give an enormous shout out. They are a Benedictine community. They are amazing, and they have done great things for me in working with this book. So Steve, we're going to send like a follow-up something to everybody, aren't we? So
yeah.
On that, we will put more information about this. But if you look up my book on the Paraclete Press website, right now the Lent supplement, because of a computer glitch, if you click the read more button, the more that you get is the Lent supplement. Pretty soon there's also going to be a button that says like discussion guide. But that's a free download. I would love for you to pray your way through Lent with this book.
It's really great. Neat. Could I ask you to close us out with another reading?
Well, sure. I'll make it shorter than this. I've had a few paragraphs in mind, but I'm going to do one that I think sums it up. This is from a chapter called From the Rising of the Sun to Its Setting, which is about the day we walked from Manresa to Montserrat, which literally the sun was very low on the horizon when we left, and it was very low on the horizon when we arrived. So this paragraph comes in after we have stopped for lunch and been given ice cream treats by Father Jose. What a guy. So I say, resuming our walk, we turned to see the Montserrat range on the horizon behind us. The mountains looked like a cardboard cutout at the back of a diorama. It was shocking to realize we'd started our day there. Presently, Father Jose cut a corner, dragging us across a large field. Knee-deep in dried stalks and sticky burrs, he reminded us that the Spanish word for pilgrims is peregrinos, literally, strangers who walk in fields. Now you are true peregrinos, he joked. Growing serious, he added, let us always be grateful for the people we meet along the way. I am so grateful for the people I met along this way, especially all of you right in front of me right now. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'm also so grateful to all of you for all of you panelists, and Mary and Christine for being here with us today. Thank you to Mary for making this whole thing possible 7 years ago when it all got started. I also I have to thank all of you in the audience, our benefactors, for supporting IBC. It's no secret that times are tough in the nonprofit community right now. The international side of our field is really worried right now, and the domestic side of our field is also really worried. And in any nonprofit, there's always more work to be done than there are people to do it. And IBC members are able to get in there and do the work. And our partners, they can depend on us because we can depend on you. And so I thank you on behalf of all of us at IBC for supporting the work we do and for helping to have everyone experience a difference. So thanks, everyone. And oh, wait, one last thing. If you can't get enough of these IBC webinars, we have a special national virtual information session, March 24th at noon. Father Greg Boyle from Homeboys Industries will be joining us as our special guest. So if you know someone who is interested in IBC, or if you're interested in learning more about IBC, or if you're a IBC member now and you just want to relive it all over again, please join us March 24th for our information session. So,
and can I add, you don't need to live in an IVC city to join IVC. Because of our virtual community, you can live literally anywhere in any country.
'Tis true. And we're going places. Come along.
Yeah. Thank
Amen.
you, Steve.
Everyone.
Thank you, Christine.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.